Today, we're honored to have Gil Friend on the line with us. And Gil was recently called by Tomorrow Magazine one of the country's leading environmental management consultants, a real expert who combines theoretical sophistication with hands-on, in-the-trenches know-how. Gil, you're one of the rock stars, and you've been one of the rock stars of the whole sustainability and green movement for about 40 years now. I don't want to give any ages away or anything like that, but Gil, you've really been doing this before it was cool or before it was good to go green. Tell us where we are now and where we've been, and thank you for joining us and on Green is Good.
Well, my pleasure, guys. Well, it's always been good to be green. It's just people are more aware of that now.
Right.
Where we are is we're in a sea change, the one that, one that might be historic, frankly. We've seen a profound change in how business thinks about green or sustainability or whatever the term we want to call, or environmentally responsible. For a long time, most companies have thought that you either have to choose between making money or being environmentally responsible. They assumed that green would cost them dollars. And so, understandably, companies would resist efforts for stronger environmental regulation, and environmentalists would say, hey, the company should do more and take less profit, and that's the way the battle has been fought for decades. And what's changed in the last bunch of years is that people understand that there is no necessary trade-off between the two. Waste is waste, and if you're wasting energy, it's not only bad for the climate, it's bad for your bottom line. Conversely, if you can run your organization more efficiently and use less stuff to get the same product or service out the door, if you can use less kilowatt hours or gallons of gasoline to deliver the benefit, if you can use less gallons of water to get the service to your customer, that's going to be good for the customer, good for the shareholders, good for the environment, and everybody wins. So that's been a big, big change. And frankly, a couple of years ago, companies would come to us and say, well, gosh, could you help us understand the business case for the sustainability thing? How do we think about it? What's the logic? Why should we be paying attention to this? And about 2 years ago, coincidentally, right around the time Walmart started getting serious about this stuff, those calls pretty much stopped. And every company calling us up said in some version of these same words, said, please tell us what the bleep to do. In other words, clearly they figured out it's time for action. It's time for action that is sound and business-wise and profitable, but that really embraces these questions and turns it into a source of business opportunity.
So at your firm, Natural Logic, how long have you had that firm?
Natural Logic's in its 11th year.
Okay.
I've been advising businesses on these matters for about 20 years, and as you said, been working in this field for, close on to 40.
So is this now one of the best times ever to be in this sector?
It's all that we and our colleagues can do to keep up. The client demand is rising rapidly. It's partly because of, I mentioned drivers like Walmart saying to their 66,000 suppliers, we want sustainable products from you. It's partly the rising awareness around climate change and energy instability. It's partly the policy shift from, the state of California moving on to the government of the United States under Barack Obama. And frankly, it's partly that more and more people are seeing businesses, often major businesses, taking a step in this direction and being successful. Nothing sells like success, John.
Right. And so give us a little slice, without giving away any trade secrets, give us a little slice of some of who are the brand type of clients that we all know and our listeners know and want to hear about that you're advising, and what does it mean when you advise them? How do you bring them in the right direction to understand that it's also not only great for the environment but great for their bottom line to implement a sustainability program?
Well, let me take that in stages. To your first question, who are we working with? Some of our clients have included Coca-Cola, Williams-Sonoma, Hewlett-Packard, Pacific Gas and Electric Company, Gilead Scientific, General Mills, the United States Department of General Services, the state of California, all the way down on the smaller scale to companies like Odwalla, the juice company, Cheesecake City, a 2-3 person bakery here in the Bay Area, the city of Berkeley. So pretty varied. We very intentionally never specialize in a specific sector like a lot of consulting companies do. We're across the board. We see a lot of the value that we bring to our clients in our ability to cross-fertilize and to teach things from one sector that another doesn't know. To your second question of how do we work with them, we'll typically start sitting down with a senior team, whether it's a board of directors or an executive committee or an owner of a private company, and have a conversation about where the company wants to go, about what are the risks and opportunities that it faces now, what's the new business landscape as we see it, and how do those elements start to align into a strategy that makes sense. We'll typically next do a series of rapid diagnostics, looking at what's happening on the ground right now. How are the facilities being operated? How efficient are they? How are the products being designed? Do they meet the emerging requirements of new markets? How does the company measure its performance? Does it do it in a way that really provides enough knowledge and insight to people so they can make better business decisions? What's its capacity for change? How can it not just get good ideas but actually put them into practice? Because the fact is, the engineering part of this work, building a building that uses less energy or designing a product that has less toxics in it, is the easy part compared to the real challenge of getting human beings like you and me to change habits and change behavior and act differently on Monday morning than they did before. So all of those are parts of the puzzle. And then for the clients that are ready, we'll then take a next step and say, okay, how do we start to build this into a strategy and an implementation program and a training program and performance measurement systems that build this into the daily lifeblood of the company so that it becomes part of the normal things that the company does. Not something exotic, not something green, not something cool, but just like, well, this is just how we do it. For me, one of the measures of success is to look back and say 5 years from now or 10 years from now and have people say, oh, the stuff you've been talking about, everybody knows that. We've always done it that way. That's a kind of success for the sort of work we're doing.
I mean, some of the brands that you handle, from Coca-Cola to Nike to General Mills, are all huge brands and all that we're used to. But does this also apply to the small business owner too? The guy who owns the car wash, the dry cleaner, the 5 and dime store. How does that relate, big and small?
Well, it relates to any business that uses energy or that uses water or that produces waste or that generates emissions or that has any kind of impact on the environment. So it basically applies to everybody because we all live in the material world. We all have a physical footprint from our activity on the environment that supports us. The difference is this. The difference is the big companies have research and development departments. They may have a dedicated sustainability staff, and the small companies are often much leaner. But that's an advantage. They can't afford to waste, and and most small companies understand that and have done what they can to drive waste out of their systems. But we have found there's always more to do, and if we can help them do that, then that's really to their benefit and to the benefits of the communities they operate in. It's the sort of thing that extends beyond the company. If you have whether it's printer, restaurant, dry cleaning company, training company, car wash, whatever in a community, if you're spending more money on electricity than you need to, every one of those dollars is probably leaving your community to fund a utility company somewhere else that's shipping electrons into you. If you save that money, that's money in your pocket that you can spend locally on goods and services down the block from you, and that actually enhances the local economy. So there's a real economic development benefit to this, as well as a benefit to the individual company.
So,
this applies to small companies regardless. It applies to organizations regardless of size and regardless of industry. We have so far done what we call integrated eco-audits, on-the-ground facility assessments, looking at operations and efficiency. We've probably done that now with close to 200 companies in a wide range of industries, and we have yet to find a company where we didn't find money lying on the floor waiting to be picked up.
Does this go
even in companies that are really well run?
And does this go beyond companies? Does this also go with public entities such as cities and municipalities? Do you consult to them also and bring them the good word on those too?
School systems, universities. These organizations have buildings, and the buildings have energy bills and water bills. They have people who commute to them. They have equipment in them that uses power. They have air quality that affects the people who work in them. They have the jobs they do in the world. And the fact is that a school system or a city hall is no different than a business, except for the ownership and the responsibility for what do you do with the money. City government has a budget. It collects money from taxes. It spends it to accomplish certain results. It has a surplus or a deficit at the end of the year. It doesn't have shareholders. It has voters.
Right.
So I think, from our perspective, if you look at, the way we look at an organization, frankly, is that we look at the metabolism. We look at the flow of energy and materials that goes through it. Energy and materials come into every kind of organization, regardless of the business that you're in, And coming out the other end, you have product and non-product. If you're making stuff, or if you're a service organization, you have intended results and unintended results. And every business organization, institution, or even household in the world looks like that to our metabolic view. So for us, they're much more similar than they are different. And the good news there is that all these opportunities and all these benefits apply across the board to all of them, regardless of sector.
Right. Well, Gil, everything you said is amazing, but, it's time to get to your book. So after the commercial break, we're going to talk about the truth about green business. You don't have to choose between making money and making sense. We want to hear all about your book, and we want to give our listeners some little small teases that they could grab onto and then go buy your book and learn all about what you're thinking and all about why it's good to be green, and green is good.
If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shigarian and Mike Brady.
Welcome back to Green is Good. We've got Gil Friend on the phone, and Gil, your background's amazing. You're the founding board member of the Sustainable Business Alliance, Sustainable Berkeley, the California Sustainable Business Council. You've been doing this for a long time. You've got wonderful perspectives, and so you recently wrote a book that just was released in early June, The Truth About Green Business, and then the tagline is, you don't have to choose between making money and making sense. Why did you write this book, and what's changed about the green business industry and world in the last few years that make this book a must-buy for all of our listeners?
Well, I wrote this book because people keep asking me, both here in my company and as I travel around the country, and I hear this from my colleagues and competitors too. People are asking, we're interested in this. We know our business has to do something. What do we do? Where do we start? How do we put this into practice? And so we wanted to try to boil down into one place a really compact, right to the point, very practical collection of advice that helps people understand the business case, understand the business logic of doing this, and the real nuts and bolts of what do you do, whether you're in a large business or a small one, whether you're in a service business or a product business, whether you're making cupcakes or automobiles. What are the things that you need to think about to make a business strategy that works for making money and making sense, that operates more efficiently, that wastes less resources and money, and that reduces the carbon footprints that contribute to global warming, that help people design and buy products and services that will support their business goals, that will help them engage their employees and their stakeholders outside the company, their suppliers and their customers, help engage them in green innovation processes, and to help them communicate the benefits of green in a way that is good marketing, that sells what they're trying to sell and that tells the truth and doesn't greenwash. So we've been asked so many times, we figure there's a lot more appetite for this out there than we can ever possibly serve as one company. So we thought we'd put everything we know into a well-designed book and get it out on the streets. And
what I love about you is, in your bio, I saw a tagline that you were one of the co-founders of a Think and Do Tank. Not just the think tank, because the world has, Mike, the world has so many of those, Mike, huh?
Well, what was it? Our friend Tom Pace says the difference between winners and losers in life is a word called action. I mean, right. We can spend so many hours and spend our entire lives thinking of great things to do, but if we never take that first step, then all the thought in the world is kind of pointless, really.
So I love that you were one of the co-founders of a Think and Do Tank. Gil, I haven't read your book yet, but I've read all the chapter headings, and they're broken down into truths, which is a wonderful way to propose them. And one of the number 7, truth number 7, I just love that one. How green is good enough? Because it becomes this, how do we make it not a burden, but really a benefit? But, when you start getting the bug, you start going, and then you realize, I'm not doing enough. How do you balance that?
How do you balance what?
How green is good enough? How do you balance? Hey, I'm doing some stuff. Is that enough, or is it not enough? How do you balance that whole?
I'm asking the question not to make anybody guilty. It's not to say, hey, you're a bad guy because you're not doing enough.
Right.
Say, take a look at your programs, and you may already have a recycling initiative, and you may have already done some energy efficiency improvements in your company. But this is to say, well, don't stop there. Don't figure that you're done. Because, we're in a world where the technology is advancing all the time. The opportunities are advancing all the time. So we'll say to a company that may have cut 10 or 20% out of their energy bill, we'll say, great, that's terrific, really good on you. What it would take if you cut 50%? Could you cut 70%? Now, the first reaction is, oh, my God, that's impossible. But then one of the things we'll do is say, well, here's an example of a company like yours that has done it. And, they've cut their bill 60%. Here's how they did it. Here's what it cost them. Here's what the return on investment for that was. Now, was the 20% savings, does that seem good enough to you anymore? Or do you want to try for something a little bit bigger and better? We're in a time now, it's a remarkable time in human history and in business history because the boundary conditions are changing almost every week. And what's good enough and what's possible to do is changing. And so we're just encouraging people to say, well, don't take it for granted. Don't rest on your laurels. Don't assume that the way you've always done it is the way that you're always going to do it. Think about where the world's going to be tomorrow, where your competitors are going to be next year, where energy prices are going to be next year, and ask the question of how good could we get this? How do we do even better? You look at how people perform in the Olympics where, somebody breaks the world's record and then the next year 3 people break the record one after another and the next year 10 more. So what was a barrier to human accomplishment just falls to pieces.
So it's all about constantly raising the bar.
Constantly raising the bar. And the guideline for this, frankly, is right in front of us. Nature's living systems have 3.8 billion years experience.
Oh, wow.
In producing systems that are efficient and effective and adaptive, and that's where the playbook is. You look at nature systems, what do you see? You see systems that run 100% on renewable energy. You see systems that have zero waste. Well, those are good guidelines for the human economy, too. It's not just a matter of reducing your waste, although that's a great place to start, but what if you could eliminate it?
Got it.
Because, what's waste after all? Waste is stuff that a company makes that it can't sell.
So
it trucks it off to a landfill and it pays somebody to take it away. Wouldn't you rather have a business that could sell everything it makes?
Yeah. So if you were to take your book, and for our listeners, since we have a limited time here, give them the top 5 things from what businesses need to know that they're going to get out of your book. The truth about green business. What are they going to get? To give us your top 5 so our listeners say, hey, this guy Gil Friend makes sense. I'm going to go buy that book.
Well, one would be to take a look at what actually happens in your company. What flows through your business? What's the energy and water and materials that you buy? What goes out the door at the other end as product or satisfied customers or waste or things that you can't sell?
Right.
Just take a look at that. Pay attention to that. Maybe even keep track of that. Make little notes on a notepad or an Excel spreadsheet or something over time to see what are the trends. Is stuff getting better or worse?
Right.
Talk to your people about that. Give everybody the same view of that little map of the flow of stuff through your company, and talk together about what could we do to improve the service we provide to our customers, to improve our products, and cut the flow of stuff through this organization. Identify some opportunities and then do them. Like you said before, talk without action isn't very helpful here. Do them, try them out, test them, measure the results. Just like, any business is good at that, at keeping track of what happens, count the money, count the electrons, count the gallons of water, and say, did this work or did this not work? If it worked, let's do more of it.
So I see that
if it didn't work, how do we do it better?
So I see that, you have a wonderful chapter called The Truth About Green Management. So just like you just said, engaging employees, engaging stakeholders, and then keeping score.
This is, the engaging people is really key because a lot of the innovation in organizations can come from the people you least expect. It come from people on the shop floor, even the janitors, the chambermaids in a hotel, not just the managers and executives and engineers. But that takes bringing people into the game, helping them understand what the issues are, and helping them learn a few new questions to ask, because they have eyes and ears that reach far beyond where the eyes and ears of management and owners can reach.
How about the cost of green building now? Is that becoming a cost-effective thing to say that we've moved into a LEED certified building, or we just built a new building that's LEED certified? Is the cost of green building, have we reached that tipping point?
Well, this is another place where people have this assumption that a greener building is going to cost them more money, and it's simply not true. It's not borne out by the evidence. Herman Miller built a green office building in Michigan a few years ago. It cost them something like 15% less to build the building than a so-called normal office building, and of course cost them far less to operate.
Huh.
So, for a lot of people, they'd say, I'll spend a little bit more on a green building because I'll make it back later on my energy savings. That makes perfect sense. It's good business logic. Herman Miller said, no, we're going to build a greener building that costs less to operate and costs less to build. So what's their payback on that? They were profitable before they opened the doors of the building.
So so that makes a lot of sense. So why is this book then, and why is your services at Natural Logic, what raises you above the din? Why is this book better and more able to deliver the goods now to our listeners who all want to become part of the green revolution, except most of them don't know where to jump in? So is this that roadmap?
Well, we'd like to think that it is, and I think the distinction is that we bring two things to the table. First is that, very frankly, we will challenge our clients. We will push our clients in a way that's very supportive and friendly, but firm, to say, have you done enough? Have you thought this through deeply enough? Are you leaving opportunity on the table? Are you leaving money on the table? Are you really being as innovative and effective as you can be? So on the one hand, we're going to push them really hard, with the standards in mind being the laws of nature, the world, the living world that runs on renewable energy and has zero waste and no free toxic materials in it at all. And on the other hand, we are doggedly practical, focused on the bottom line, focused on the day-to-day realities of business, because we know that bringing a business person a pile of philosophy that they can't put into practice on the shop floor does them no good at all. So we try to marry those two things, the aggressive aspirations and the dogged practicality of the day-to-day business reality, and put them together. And in the book, in The Truth About Green Business, what we've tried to do is boil that down into 52 truths that pretty much cover the landscape of the basics that you need to know and translate it into very simple nuts and bolts. Here's how you get it done.
So if that's the case, and now I work with your company or I work with another consultant or just do it on my own after reading your book, how do I then turn to the community, to my clients, to my potential clients, and how do I go about green branding and messaging, which I know is another chapter in your book? Give us a little highlight on how then is it appropriate to message the green message, that green is good.
This is probably a longer conversation, but the simple answer is tell the truth.
Got it.
Don't overstate what you've done. Be clear about what you've done and why you've done it. Recognize that nobody is perfect in this game. There are, in truth, there are no green companies. There's nobody that's perfect at this now. So talk about where you are and where you are, where you're going and where your goals are. And I think if you're honest about that, if you're honest about where you want to go and where you are today and what the gap is, people are going to respect that. If you claim perfection, people are going to bust you.
And so
the simple story is be clear, tell the truth, and talk about your motivations and your aspirations and where you want to go, and ask for help from your suppliers and your customers. Invite them to be partners with you in this transition.
So when you're watching television or just driving along and seeing billboards and you're seeing how advertisers, big companies are now positioning themselves here, do you typically on a daily basis, rate them in your own mind, like roll your eyes at some that are just out and out, just really greenwashing, and on others say, hey, they really get it and they're really doing a great job? And give us some examples if you can. Our listeners would love to know.
Well, so two parts. So do I watch these? Yes, I do. Do I roll my eyes? Yeah, more often than not. I think at this point it's not so much that companies are intentionally misleading about this, but often very naive.
Gotcha.
And sometimes kind of superficial in the claims they're making.
Right.
Others are very careful and very rigorous.
And what's one of in the last 6 months? Give us an example of one really great one. We don't have to talk about the bad ones. The bad ones will be found out on their own. Has something caught your eye?
One that's caught my eye has been Subaru, the automobile manufacturer, which is talking about running zero waste factories.
Gotcha.
I haven't been on the ground. I haven't cross-checked their data, but I know they have that program in place, and they've been working diligently to drive all kinds of waste out of the manufacture of their automobiles. Not a simple thing to do. And not a simple story to tell, but I'm impressed that they are working on that and that they're telling that.
Hey, Gil, you're amazing. We're down to the last minute in your book, The Truth About Green Business, which gives 52 crucial truths about the green movement. It's just a great book. I'm going to buy it and read it. It's on Amazon.com, and people can also find it on NATLogic.com. But leave us with a couple.
Truth.
Yeah. Give us a couple of last pearls of wisdom in the last 60 seconds. A couple of things you want leave our listeners with.
Well,
besides, buy your great book.
Yeah, that'd be great to do. Well, one I'd emphasize, as I said before, is see this as a partnership. It's a partnership with your employees, it's a partnership with your suppliers, and it's a partnership with your customers. That's one point I would say. Second, if you're thinking about reducing your waste, keep in mind that a lot of your waste is generated the moment you buy something. The form that it comes in, the packaging that it comes in, the quality of the materials that you buy, those are all generators of what your waste is. So your purchasing decision is a waste generation decision. And frankly, for those of your listeners who don't own businesses but are people who shop in businesses, keep in mind that your purchasing decision is a way that you vote every single day of the year. You don't just vote on election day, but you vote every time you slap a dollar on the counter to buy one product versus another.
Well, I'm gonna cut it. I'm gonna cut it there. I'm gonna say everyone out there, all our listeners, Mike, should slap some money down and buy The Truth About Green Business. It's a wonderful read. They can learn a lot. And Gil Friend, you are living proof that green is good.